What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Professor Bourbon Podcast. We had another little hiatus after some scheduling conflicts, but we are finally back to talk about the Lord's Brown Water, good old Kentucky bourbon. Professor Bourbon, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great. Glad to be back, and even more so looking forward to coming down to the Annex in about a month or so. So things have been going well. I've had a lot of fun. Anxious to get started.
Yeah, we're looking forward to having you down here, taking you out on some hunts. Professor Bourbon in person, when we let him loose in some of these private liquor stores down here in Georgia, he tends to get a little bit out of hand, which is great for us. Mrs. Professor Bourbon would probably disagree with us a little bit about some of the spending habits that we have when he's in town. But it's usually a lot of fun going through some liquor stores we're near down here. So looking forward to that. What do you have in your glass tonight?
Well, today in our glass, and we're about to put it in there, we have the Larceny A124, which I think Fred Minnick just gave some really good scores to, so I'm hoping this one will be good. I had a little of the A123 last night. I really enjoyed it. So let's, like we do on our TikTok, let's open this guy and give him a pour.
Yeah, I didn't realize you had already picked one of those up. So we also have one of those waiting for you here at the house. So maybe the Annex and the library will both just have to have an open A124 of Larceny this year.
Nothing wrong with that.
Oh, that's the best sound. That's the best sound. We'll have to clip that sound, and that's the best.
Not covered, an ode to Freddie. We're not going to cover it. We're going to leave it off on the side here. You can't see that, but that's what's in the glass today. Larceny A124. In the Heaven Hill, mandatory Heaven Hill glass.
All right, so now we get, for the first time on Professor Bourbon Podcast, we'll have a live first tasting and see what that neck pour kind of tastes like.
Well, so far the nose is very inviting, very typical Larceny. Nice and deep and dark. Not a lot of proof on the nose, which is nice given that it is 124.2 proof or 62.13% alcohol, I think it says there, so it doesn't quite make it to the over the top there, but
look at those old boomer eyes still working.
That's hateful. Oh boy. That first little sip was to get us going. We got to do it the way we taught you to do it.
You have to wake up the palate, as they say.
Wake up the palate. Got some nice caramel, cinnamon, really dark and rich. Oh, that is really good. Really dark, rich, nice mouthfeel. Almost no alcohol burn for a 124. That's amazing.
Those
really
those Heaven Hill barrel proofs are sneaky smooth sometime, even at that 124 proof.
Yeah, they are. So, given that there's a whole lot of other people who've done much better tasting notes than this on this, let's head off into the scouting report. Beside this Larceny A124, what else have you found?
Yeah, the A124 I have here at the house, and then we also found another edition of the NBC, the Nashville Barrel Company, a Georgia release. This particular one is 112.92 proof, but I know we've mentioned this before. Usually if we can find one of these and it's at retail price, MSRP, we'll pick one up, and they're usually a really good pour. So what's kind of your opinion on those NBC picks that we've been finding?
Oh, all of them that I've had, I've really liked. In fact, I saw a few when I was on my recent trip to Louisville, but I had to kind of pass on those, and we'll talk about why as we get moving along here. But I really like Nashville Barrel, and I'm really looking forward to meeting up with Mr. Proof, because he's still hanging on to a Willett Family Estate 12-year for me. So that one I just keep thinking and longing for, like just I know it's out there right now. It's a dream on the horizon. And for all you old folks, it's like the Monty Python Monty Python and the Holy Grail with the guy running up to the door and he never quite gets there. Boom, 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 running up there. But anyway, for you younger kids, you don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So let's move on.
Well, that was the first thing I thought of, not Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which is a great movie. I'm old enough to understand that one. But the Nashville Barrel Company, first thing I thought of was Mr. Proof up there in Nashville, who's kind of part of our scouting department for Professor Bourbon as well. He's found us some great bottles up there. I know he's anxious to see us because I have a 13th Colony cast strength single barrel pick that I found for him. We kind of scratch his back. He scratches ours, finding things in our area. So Mr. Proof in the Nashville Barrel, he's one of those hounds up there for Nashville. I know I didn't tell you earlier, but I have to mention it, what's in my glass today, because we just have to shout out the haters. The class always drinks Blanton's whenever we're filming a Professor Bourbon podcast. It's her favorite bourbon by far. Cheers. And so today I thought I'd join her and have a nice glass of Blanton's. It's been a while since I've had some. So cheers to the haters. 93 proof. It's delicious. If you can find it for MSRP, it's a great bourbon. Don't listen to people to tell you that it's trash. Don't seek it out like the Holy Grail that we were just talking about. But Blanton's is always a solid pour. So I had to say one shout out to the haters.
And of course you got to shout out Blanton's. And then since we last talked together, I've picked up 2 bottles of Blanton, one straight from the barrel, and the other one on my trip to Louisville. On my way in, I went in a day early and started out at Buffalo Trace, and Blanton's was the bottle of the day, along with Buffalo Trace and Sazerac, Baby Saz, and some other things, and the scout was losing his mind because I had a tour. And I didn't realize how crazy the line was at Buffalo Trace, which somebody called the Six Flags of Bourbon while I was in line, which I thought was a great line. And I didn't realize exactly how nuts that place was at not between 9 and 10 o'clock in the morning. I was like, oh, my tour's at 10:30. I'll get there at 9:45. I'll be fine. No. By the time I got checked in, got in the line's about 40 deep. I was like, well, I got to go on this tour. And I told the scout in the class that I was going on the tour and putting back my bottle of Blanton's that they had, and they both nearly had a heart attack. But it turned out good for me because I got all done with my tour, went back. Guy asked me what I was looking for. I said a B. So now I'm missing all but the second N. So my Blanton's with my straight from the barrel, which I didn't know what letter I was going to get it fit in, and now all I need is the N with the 2 dots to finish up my second N. And then it'll probably be a decade or more before I finish them that I can actually put the caps in the little thing. So that's not going to happen anytime soon. So, and you can see the Blanton's, I think, is up over. This is all backwards to me. It's behind my head. You can't really see it. It's over here somewhere.
Yeah, we have the same thing over here in the annex. We have the full lineup of Blanton's, which we spent a couple of years picking up at MSRP. But now that we have it, like you said, it's going to take us quite a while to enjoy it and be able to send those letters into Buffalo Trace and get that stave that a lot of people do, which is really cool. So if you haven't seen that, you can also check that out. But speaking of your trip to Louisville, for this week's kind of what has Professor Bourbon read, I know that from the stuff you were sending me while you were on the Bourbon Trail that you picked up several books, which I would love to get more. I'm not one of those people that reads a lot, and I think that bourbon could be one of those bridges to get me into reading a little bit more. So I'd be a little bit interested to see maybe a few of those books that you picked up while you were up there. Maybe you can bring them down to the annex once you read them. But what'd you find while you were up there on the Bourbon Trail?
Well, while I was up there, we'll just talk about the books really briefly. I ended up buying a dozen books, and I did leave one on the table at Pepper's Distillery on my way back home, because I couldn't quite pull the trigger because it was $100 for these 2 pair, and I looked on Amazon, I could get it for like 50, and I was like, oh, for that, I'll just wait and order it. But I'll come back to one that I've read, and just to make the scout irritated, because I read it and he doesn't think it has anything to do with bourbon, but I'm not sure I agree with him. But I bought 12 books, and the ones I'm really kind of looking forward to interesting, we'll talk with. The first one is, because we've been talking about Blanton's, is this book called Warehouse H. and it's a story on the history of Warehouse H. And we know what Warehouse H is, right? Because Warehouse H is all about Blanton's. It's the one place and the only place that Blanton's comes from. And when we were on the tour, we went and saw them bottle the Blanton's. I could have probably ran off with as many caps as I wanted to when nobody was paying attention to the box of caps that was laying next to me. But I thought that would be cheating, so I didn't take any caps. But we watched them bottle up the Blanton's, and that was one of the stops on the tour. But I also got a book that I'm really looking forward to called Bourbon Justice, written by Brian Hara with a foreword by Fred Minnick, and it's called Bourbon Justice: How Whiskey Law Shaped America. So that ought to be pretty interesting, given some of the things we talked about and some of our future guests that we're working out, bringing on here on the Bottled in Bond Act and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to reading this one. And then given that we a plan in the future. I know you guys are tired of hearing the plans in the future, but I got this book called Proof, and it's The Science of Booze. And this one looks really cool, by Adam Rogers. It's a New York Times bestseller, and it's about it's the story of basically about booze and about proof and about aging and smell and taste and how booze interacts. Just basically the science of booze. So I'm really looking forward to that one. And then the one I did read on the airplane on my trip to beautiful Ruston, Louisiana, and I got a story about that trip too, which is kind of fun, is called the Pie Cellar, the Drunk and the Lady. And it's a story about the heroes of the 1833 cholera epidemic in Lexington, Kentucky. And the scout's like, what the hell has that got to do with bourbon? Well, I went to a restaurant on my way back home. I stopped in Lexington to go to the Pepper's Distillery. And there's two distilleries right in that other one. The other one's called the Barrel Distilling Company, I believe. And I sat down to have lunch, and I got a rabbit burgoo. And my waiter's name was Phil, and he was a history major at Transylvania University. And we fixed to talking about history and bourbon, and he did his thesis on hemp. So that's another possible thing. He agreed that he might come on sometime, and he said, you know what? You need to read this book about the cholera epidemic and the drunk, the pie seller, and the lady, which is really interesting. It's a very interesting book. It's a creative nonfiction about a guy that drank a lot of rye whiskey and was one of the best diggers of road repair, because this is when roads were done by hand, in the burgeoning city of Lexington, which is home to many distilleries, including Town Branch, Peppers, the Barrel Bourbon Company. Read it on the airplane, and basically on 2 flights, headed off to Ruston, Louisiana via Shreveport, and really enjoyed it. I don't care whether you think it's got nothing to do with bourbon or not, but it's a really good book, really interesting about pandemics and what the lessons we learned, and how in cholera we did a lot of the same crap we did later. Like, we don't know what's going on, so let's try something. So it's a really good book, and it shows that the more things change, the more they stay the same.
In my defense, when you first described the book, your description was, yeah, this is a great book about cholera in 1833. And I was like, yeah, that's great. Let's talk about that on the podcast. I'm sure people that want to know about bourbon also are curious what was going on with cholera in 1833. So if you had told me that it was about that in Lexington and had to do with whiskey, I wouldn't have given you such a hard time. So thank you for explaining it further for our listeners instead of me. But
look, it's not a lot of fun. It's not a lot of fun if I don't lead you on first. I mean, it's a really interesting book about Lexington, Kentucky in 1833, and it has some great stories about the pie lady was a slave of one of the big muckety mucks in Lexington, and he made her free. And her pies are one of the things that made her. So it's a story about the way she could and couldn't interact in the market, and the way she basically saved the drunk from himself, because he had gotten, as he aged, he had gotten so bad that he couldn't dig roads anymore, but she saved him from herself. And then the lady is an interesting story about a upper class lady in Lexington that what the cholera epidemic did was really interesting is it created a lot of orphans because their parents died and the kids didn't. So she built an orphanage in Lexington and brought together a bunch of the citizens in there, including distillers and things like that. So it's a really good book. It's a very good book. And I don't care whether you don't think it's about bourbon. How about that?
I think it has a little bit. I can see how it relates to it and how the origins of it are there. I get it now. I didn't get it before. I get it now. The Professor Bourbon has taught me another lesson once again. I appreciate it.
That's the job here. I'll tell you what, 2 drops of water really brought out the dark caramel brown sugar. This is like somebody took a caramel and just rolled it around in like that almost molasses brown sugar. Oh my goodness. Oh man, that is just.
I mean,
really,
you're making it real tempting for me to open this up whenever I get done with this little glass of Blanton's I have. I might have to see if it's any good. If my bottle's as good as your bottle, I might just have to pop this one open and. I'm gonna
tell you what. Early first grade. This is gonna go. Usually, when I grade stuff, it goes into a pile, and I work through the pile, and they change. This is in the early B+ pile. This is really, really good.
Yeah, I might have to pop open this bottle then. Yeah. Yeah, once I finish this Blanton's, I think I'm going to have to pop that open myself. We might have a first. We're going to have 2 firsts on this episode. Not only the first time we've opened a bottle live, but the first time we've opened 2 bottles live, different places, same bottle, and we'll get our initial reactions. So that'll be kind of fun. But I know I've heard all about your Louisville trip. I'm interested for you to tell everybody else kind of about your Louisville trip, about the distilleries you visited. I'm not going to ruin the surprise, but there's a great story that I know you have at the end, an experience that was really cool while you were up there. But just kind of tell me what happened while you were up there. Tell me about some of the distilleries, anything cool you might have seen or any stories you might have heard while you were up there.
Sure. So it was fun. I had a working weekend there in my other hobby, kind of speak, that pays for me, but we'll leave that aside for now. And some good friends that I got to work with that weekend and share some of this stuff, which was a lot of fun. And so I decided, since I was working Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and I didn't have to work on Tuesday, I would head towards Lexington. I would head out from Virginia on Tuesday morning. Since Mrs. Professor Bourbon went to visit her mother, there was no reason for me to stick around here, so I got in the car and headed west, and stayed in Lexington on Tuesday night. Got up bright and early, and I already told you I went to Buffalo Trace first thing in the morning, and I really wasn't. And I made I went from there, went and had some lunch, and made the second stop at this little place called Whiskey Thief Distilling in rural Franklin County. And this place is really cool. It's an old barn, and I met the owner, and I'm going to exchange with the owner. I told him about Mr. Professor Bourbon. He thought it was he thought it was really cool. I talked to the master distiller, and at the end of the tour, the so-called tour, I don't mean so-called like it. Oh my God, like at the end of the thieving process. So I show up on this, drive down this dirt road, around the corner, down the hill, up the thing, and there's a big barn. And there's a giant barn with a still in it. And in the back, I met the lady. I can't remember the first lady's name. Wonderful lady. We talked for a minute. She gave me my little glass and said, here's the deal. They're on a tour right now. If you want to do a tour, they can talk to you a little bit later. But you go in the back over there, and there are 4 or 5 barrels laid on their side with the bung out, and there's a whiskey thief. And all you got to do is stick the whiskey thief into the barrel, pull it out. Although we can't do it. I'm sorry. They pull it out and put it in the glass because we can't touch it until we do our own bottle. So they have to pour it into our glasses. Otherwise, they get in trouble with the thing. So let me correct that. I never touched a whiskey thief till I filled my bottle. So We got a nice
Hold
little
on,
glass.
hold on. I think I heard the noise from the class. We keep saying whiskey thief. What is a whiskey thief? For people that are listening and might not know, what is a whiskey thief?
Okay, a whiskey thief is like a big copper straw. So it's I don't know 3 feet long, probably that big around, an inch and a half or two. I don't think it's 2 inches, inch and a half around, inch and 3/4 around. With a, it looks like it kind of looks like this, except it's made out of copper and it's got a hole on the top. So you stick it down when distillers want to taste the whiskey. One way to do it is to pull out the bung, take this big straw, big copper tube that's kind of tapered, stick it into the and maybe we can add a picture of it here in the notes or something. And in fact, I took a picture of one at Buffalo Trace. And there's a hole on top of it. You put your thumb over your hole. You pick the whiskey thief like a straw out of a liquid right up out of the thing, right up out of the barrel, and then you let go of the top. And because of the way physics work, right, when you put your finger on top, so some physics lessons for you there, Scout, is the way when we think about when you put a straw in water, the water pressure, the air pressure pushes the water down and up into the straw. When you put your thumb on top of the straw or on top of the whiskey thief and you pull it out, air pressure does not now push down on the liquid, so it stays in the thief. When you pick up your thumb, the air pressure comes back down and pushes down on the air and the liquid in it and pushes it down into your glass. So from there, you take I think it was 4 barrels, and we can maybe I have a picture of it, maybe we can add it to this too, is 4 barrels, and they let you drink from each of the 4 barrels. They give you a little bit of, and you can sip them, and that's all you have. If that's all you want to do, that's all you can do. They give you some crackers and some water, and you can take your time. You can take as much time as you want to have each sip straight from the barrel. It's got the barrel char in the bottom of the glass that it sucks up. It's barrel proof out of there, and you have 4. I'm trying to remember, it's 4 or 5 choices. I can't remember. I have to look at a picture because it's driving me nuts. Maybe the class can find that picture in the photo album. But and if you're all done, if you want to, you can bottle your own, make your own bottle. And you do that by taking the thief out and repeatedly taking the thief out, putting it over the bottle, filling the bottle, and Amy and Haley at the Whiskey Thief Distilling were fantastic. They helped me do the stuff. Amy filmed me, Amy or Haley, I forget which one, filmed me doing this stuff. It's a 10-year-old distillery. If you're in Franklin County, it's about 20 miles west of Buffalo Trace. It is one of the best experiences that I have had on the tour, and maybe it rivals the Whiskey Thief tour that we did at Bardstown. And the only reason it wouldn't be better than that is because we actually got to taste the Origin series from the barrel in the October before they released it. And that was cool as hell to taste that stuff and then for Bardstown to release it. So go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how it compared to your Whiskey Thief experience that we had when we were at Bardstown, because I remember, I don't know if that was our first trip to the Bourbon Trail or our second trip. I think it was our first, maybe our second.
No, I think it was second. I think it was
our
second
trip. Okay, the second trip, and we got to do the Whiskey Thiefing experience, and that was by far the coolest experience we had done on the Bourbon Trail, being able to taste the bourbon straight out of the barrel. Like you said, still had like the char flakes in the bottom of the Glencairn whenever they pour it out. I mean, it's just a completely different taste than what you get once they charcoal filter it or whichever way they filter it. So while you were up there, did you happen to go by Bardstown again? Because I know that's one of our favorite by far that we go to anytime we're on the trail.
I did get to go to Bardstown, and I didn't do a tour, and I tried to sit down and eat but I ran out of time and couldn't eat there that morning because that was my third or fourth or fifth stop. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. But it was I ended up getting a bottle of their collaborative series from the why am I losing it? The Barrel Company, West Virginia Barrel Company, I believe is who the collaboration was from. Ended up picking up a barrel of there, and then you'll get a kick out of this. I bought, because I love me a quarter zip shirt. I bought me one. I thought I bought an extra large for me. I got it. I looked at it yesterday. It's an extra large women's shirt. Not I pulled off the wrong one out of the wrong rack. So the class is going to be gifted a barrel bourbon. It'll probably be too big for the class, but I don't imagine she'll mind very much. It'll have the Barrel Bourbon Company logo on it. So she inadvertently got a gift from Professor Bourbon. So she should be happy about that.
We'll figure out if we can shrink that in our washer and dryer. We'll do our best to get that down to her size.
So on Wednesday after I went there, I stopped over at Bullet and picked up a bottle of Bullet 10-year. Bullet. I think I got Bullet Single Barrel. Bullet Single Barrel is a good solid bourbon. I got, by the way, my glassware game went way up to make the library look nice. Can't wait for the class to come here and redo it. I think I bought as many pieces of glassware as I did books, and I think I bought more books and more glassware than I did bourbon. But and I should probably have my head examined for that. But so then that day ended on, I think that was all I did on that day. Then the next day I got up bright and early, and nobody wanted to come out with me. Their loss. And I went to. So I drove down to Bardstown, and I went to. I didn't know. I tried to go to 1792 because their website still makes it look like there's a store open there, but it's not. I drove to 1792, and the guy's like, "What do you want?" I go, "You're not open, are you?" "No, get out of here." So I left. But on my way down there, I stopped at Heaven Hill. I got the Scout a nice PGA Valhalla, because Valhalla was in Louisville. What was that? The Open? No. What was going on there?
It was the PGA Championship. Free Scotty.
That's right, Free Scotty. The PGA Championship was there the same weekend that I was there. So every tour I went on, I knew all the guys that were going to go to the golf later because they were wearing 3/4 zips, shorts, ankle socks, and sneakers. And I knew those were the golf guys. And I ran into them all over the place. So I got a bottle of PGA branded Elijah Craig for the Scout. I don't remember if I picked up anything at Heaven Hill. I went to Willet. I ended up getting a Willet pot still because my pot still Willet has gone down a little bit, and they've been getting kind of mixed reviews recently. So I want to retry that because my Willet pot still I really enjoyed. I got about 5 years ago when you guys were in Cumming still. I went to I went to Willet. While I was at Willet, I got to talk to an old student. A shout out to Dash if he's listening. He's teaching at a university in Des Moines. If I think for a second, it escapes me. But he's an old student of mine, and he happened to call me right as I pulled in the parking lot at Willet. I wasn't going to buy anything at Willet. Then I went back in and bought the pot still. And then I went to Lux Row, and I got a bottle of Blood Oath 10. And I got a bottle of double oaked Lux Row, which I haven't opened yet. And then I went to Bardstown, and then I went to Preservation Distillery, and I got Old Man Winter, and I got what the hell was the name of the other one? The other one was oh man, I gotta remember. It's an 8-year, and it was this is really good radio.
What's great about podcast editing is when the old man is going I can just go through there and chop that in half.
Yeah, this is really good. This is really good radio when you have to look. I got a bottle of 8-year Rare Perfection 8-year bourbon, and an Old Man Winter from Preservation. I stopped at Four Roses on my way down and got both of their single barrel distiller pick. One, I think I wrote them down in the notes. I can't remember. One is an OESF and one a OBSF, I think. I have to look those up. Don't recall
What's
off the
his
top
name?
of my head.
Elliot? Something Elliot?
Yeah, and then I got two. The guy talked me into getting two there, and I got me some glassware there too. My first stop, by the way, was Jim Beam. I got a Jim Beam 7, which I just graded as about a C. It's Jim Beam with a little bit of age on it. It's good. It's okay. It's average. It's nothing to write home about. I got some Lux Row chocolate caramels, which you got to eat with your bourbon, which were fantastic.
Oh, those are the best. Those are the best.
I was 1 week early from Booker's coming out. They had, Little Book coming out. They had all the Little Book 7 you could want. And I left on like the 19th or whatever. And on the 22nd, Little Book Chapter 8 came out. So I'm looking forward to going back to there. But what I did get, and you can kind of see it back here behind me, is I got a bottle of Jim Beam Lineage. Which is a limited batch you can only get in the Jim Beam distillery. So we'll have a review on that a little bit later. I'm really looking forward to opening that. So that was
What's the proof on that one?
The proof on that one is, I think it's not very high. It's 100 and I wish you hadn't asked me because I can't read. It's on the back of the bottle. I'll look it up in my card catalog, which at some point maybe we should hashtag and put a link to here. So
111
if you guys want
proof.
111
just
proof.
checked for us. 111.
111 proof. So I'm looking forward to trying that. And that was like 7 distilleries in one morning, and then back to work. And wow. I didn't get to go to downtown Louisville this year. And then we were supposed to do work over 3 days, and we were worried about weather on the first day, so we did 2 days work on the first day. And then it didn't rain on the second day, and we finished up. So I headed home a day early. And on my way home, I went to, I told you already about stopping in Lexington at Peppers and the Barrel and talked to Phil. But another place I stopped at Wild Turkey. And was walking by.
What'd you see there? Anything cool?
Well, Wild Turkey's kind of weird because it's a small room and there's not a lot going on there, and you can buy some stuff. And I walked down the hill. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It overlooks the river and a train trestle going over the river. People are drinking. There's some golf bros there. And I walked by this old couple sitting next to a barrel, and I like, that dude looks familiar, but I don't know. Is that just an old couple tired because they walked down the hill or whatever? So I walked down. I get me a Wild Turkey glass, and I think I bought a bottle of Rare Breed. And I'd forgotten my bourbon manual, and I forgot to get it stamped at Preservation, some other places. Like, let me run up, go to the car, get my thing. I get my thing tagged, and I walk back up, and I go, that's not just any old people just sitting there. That's not a nice old couple sitting there. I believe that's Jimmy Russell. So I stopped and I said, Mr. Russell, would you sign my bottle for me? And he said, of course I will. And he signed my bottle, and I said, do you mind taking a picture with me? And all I could think of was the damn commercial about, there's LL Cool J. Imagine there's a bubble around him. Gonna take a selfie. 1, 2. So my selfie looks like crap because I'm trying not to take a selfie to make it look silly. I go, do you mind if I take a picture with you? And he goes, certainly. I go, I'm struggling with this. I'm old. And he says, son, I've been making bourbon longer than you've been alive. So I talked to Jimmy Russell for a couple of minutes. He asked me
there goes the sound from the class. There goes the sound from the class. You have to explain who is Jimmy Russell, because I think there's some people out there that might not quite understand who Jimmy Russell is. So we need to address that really quickly.
Jimmy Russell is Mr. Wild Turkey. I mean, Jimmy Russell is one of the most famous master distillers in the world, right? He has been at it for over 60 years. So he was close to doing stuff longer than I've been alive. But Jimmy Russell is the master distiller at Wild Turkey, and he's one of the most famous distillers in Kentucky, and has been at it for, as we said, something like 60 some odd years, more than 60 years. And he just occasionally just hangs around at Wild Turkey and just meets people and talks to people. And he was just sitting there this Saturday morning, and I just happened to walk up to him and see him sitting there on a stool. And he's the creator of Rare Breed, Kentucky Spirit, and Russell's Reserve. And he's in the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. He's a lifetime honorary member of the Kentucky Distillers. I mean, he is the man when it comes to...
He is bourbon.
He is, when it comes to bourbon, Jimmy Russell is bourbon. So I got to meet Jimmy Russell. He asked me, where are you from? I said, Virginia. And I said, this is a habit I picked up. I got lots of bourbon. He said, where in Virginia? I said, South Central Virginia. Where I go, next time you're in Virginia, I got a library. I'm up over 420 bottles. Anytime you're in Virginia, you could look me up and you could come sit and have a whiskey with me. He said, I'll do that sometime. And then I started talking to his wife, and his wife's like, did you see him bungee jumping off the railroad trestle? I said, is that what they're doing? She said, yeah. I said, how about you and me and go do that? You and me go do that. She goes, oh, I like the river. I don't think I'll jump. I go, come on, you and I could go. We'll have a big old time. And she goes, nah, I don't think I'll do that. So I got to have some fun with Mrs. Russell and Jimmy Russell. They gave me a little bit of time. I probably could have spent a lot more time with them, but I felt like I was, when you're with a legend, you know, you don't want to stand there tripping over your tongue and saying stuff and standing there forever. But it was quite the honor to meet Mr. Russell.
Hey, let me put you on the spot real quick. I have an interesting question for you. If you could go back now, and now that you've had time to collect yourself and things like that, if you could go back, what question would you ask Jimmy Russell if you could have had like all of your thoughts and whatever you might have processed? And I know I'm putting you on the spot right now because we didn't talk about this before, but maybe if you thought about, and yeah, you could have taken, the class makes a good point. She just put something, you could have taken a better selfie. I'm going to put the selfie up again. I know I already put it up earlier. I'm going to put it up again. It is the most boomer selfie you have ever seen in your life. He's literally talking as he's taking the picture to Jimmy Russell. They are the two most like boomerish people you've ever seen in your life. But
and I'm trying to get I'm trying to get the bottle that he signed in the picture. I have a bottle. I gotta look. I gotta get it. I got a bottle signed by Jimmy Russell. I got a bottle of Kentucky.
And I'll give you credit. I'll give you credit while you find the bottle. 3 or 4 years ago, you would have never taken a selfie with him. You would have talked to him. You have never had the courage to take out your phone for a selfie for us. You would have never done it, but because you wanted to be able to show it to us, you took that selfie, and I'm proud of you for that.
And there's the bottle. And the same thing when I was talking to the owner of that whiskey distillery. I'm like, you got to be the scouts got to be proud of me. I'm talking now. If I could ask him a question, that's a really good question. I might ask him something about the dark days, man. How did you survive the white liquor, the clear liquor of the 1970s, and why, you know, something like that, or why have you decided to go with so few expressions? Like why you do what you do and you do it really well, where other guys are expanding and stuff like that. How come you guys don't do more of? Why have you decided not to do more of that? Because they have a few things limited. Their Russells, their Reserve, the 13, the Kentucky 13 Spirit
is great.
A friend of mine, while we were in Louisville, he walked into this store in Louisville and bought a bottle of 13. And he said, yeah, they got another one. So we went back the other night to get it, and they didn't. but I did.
Oh, Mr. Proof let me have a little bit of his one time, and it is really, really good stuff. You got to try some of that.
I really wish I had gone in there before he did. And then one last story on the trip, so we can done with the trip stuff. Second trip, I said I went to Ruston. We went into this liquor store, it looked like a gas station, and it was a drive. If you're ever in Louisiana, there are drive-through liquor stores in Louisiana where you get a, what do they call them, the Hurricane. And they give you the flavors. They're right there in the thing. And we walked in, and this place was as haphazard as hell. And I found a bottle of Jack 12 in there and a bottle of Jack 10. If I wasn't flying, I probably would have brought them both home.
Wow.
If I wasn't flying, I probably would have brought them both home. But I ended up buying the bottle of Jack 12. I got it for under $200, so I was pretty excited about that. I'll give you more of the tasting notes. I got to give it a chance because I opened it once, and I know you got to give it I'm going to give it another chance tomorrow or the day after, and give it a final grade. But so bourbon hunting's been fun the last few days. I've enjoyed it, and trips are great. Lots of books coming up. I don't know that I got much more to talk about. We've been shooting the shit now for 45 minutes, but the Jimmy Russell thing was the highlight of the trip.
That's by far the highlight. When you told me that and you sent me that picture, I was extremely jealous because I do see people talk about occasionally he's hanging out at Wild Turkey when they go to the Bourbon Trail. You might see it on social media or things like that. And I always thought how cool it'd be if you walked into that distillery and he's just sitting there in the chair chatting it up with people. And sure enough, you go up there by yourself. No one was willing to wake up and go to the distilleries with you. You end up going out there and meeting Jimmy Russell, which is just awesome. So that's really cool. I'm glad that you got to have that experience.
And all of the golf guys and all the other whiskey bros are all down there running down to get their drinks and stuff, and they're just walking by the guy. And I looked at him the first time and I was like, I believe that's Jimmy Russell. And then I went back out to the car and I came back the second time. I go, that is Jimmy Russell. I'm going to stop and I'm going to talk to Jimmy Russell. And the crappy picture makes it even better.
It does. I mean, it really does fit the format of the boomer of Professor Bourbon and what I would expect to come from that moment. It didn't need to be a perfect picture. Just the fact that you were willing to be like, hey, my son-in-law and my daughter are going to kill me if I don't take a picture. I know that's what was going through your head is if I don't take a picture to put online for Professor Bourbon, they're going to kill me, or else you would have never done that with Jimmy Russell right there. So I'm extremely proud of you for doing that. And it's good signs of things to come whenever you're on the Bourbon Trail or out at bars or out at distilleries, that you're going to be willing to document some of it for the Professor Bourbon podcast, for the page and things like that. So kudos to you, Professor Bourbon.
Hey, did you open the A124?
I haven't yet. I didn't know if I when I said it, I wasn't sure if you were going to be willing to let me try it or not. Since technically you purchased this bottle, not knowing that you'd already purchased it before. But if you're willing to do it, I will rinse a New Orleans glass. And
look, the cap is still off.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a quick pause. I'm going to rinse my New Orleans glass. We'll be right back, and I'm going to pop that bottle open.
All right. And
we're back. Got a clean glass, ready to open up the A124 Larceny. Finally got permission for it. I said it earlier, but again, I didn't want to open it and you come down here and end up taking it back and having two open bottles. So this one will stay in the annex. But after you said that your first
hang on.
is a B plus.
Hang on. I didn't say it would stay in the annex. I said you could open it. Let's not get carried away.
All right, that's fair. Touche. All right, that's fair.
The cap is still off it. Homage to Freddie.
Oh, that noise. That's the best noise. Get a little ASMR. I will say there's a lot more going on with this than there was with the Blantons earlier. Not to disrespect the Blantons at all, but there's a little bit more going on in that nose. Okay. So I will give the Blanton haters this. After sipping on Blantons for 2 glasses during that episode and then pouring that little bit of that 124.2 proof, there is a lot more complexity going on with this than there is with Blantons. I'm not talking trash on Blantons. I have not and will not talk trash on Blantons. But when you take a sip of something like that, There's a lot more complexity, and that is a really, really nice pour.
Yeah, it's tough because Blanton's is what Blanton's is, and for where it is and what you do, it is almost every time I give people stuff that around and that they know about Blanton's, and I pour things for them, and I go, which one do you like the best? Because I keep the proofs kind of similar. They almost always pick Blanton's. If you're going to be in the mid 90s, sub 100 proof,
you can't beat it.
No, it is an incredibly good bourbon, but
it smells like what bourbon is supposed to smell like. It tastes like what bourbon is supposed to taste like. Blanton's is it's the standard. It is bourbon, whether you like it or not.
No, I agree, but this is one of the reasons I like to chase proof, because I think once you let the alcohol dissipate, the complexity is so much there. You don't lose with a lot of water, and you gain with a little bit of water.
The class even poured herself a little bit of that, and she likes it as well.
While you're sipping that, we're going to set up. We're actually going to finally have a guest. Is going to come on and defend the fact that he has bottles that are.
Corrected you. The class corrected you. I heard the noise again. She said that's technically our second guest.
Oh, that's right. The first guest was Professor Bourbon's grandson, who came in and said, "What's it smell like?" Yes, bourbon. So our second guest, our first adult, well, let's not get carried away. Our first guest who is of age is going to come in and defend himself for having bottles of bourbon at his house that are unopened. And he claims it's because he's from Kentucky, and it's a birthright from being from Kentucky that you can have bottles that you don't open. So we'll let him defend himself here on the next Professor Bourbon podcast. But until then, remember to like, subscribe, and follow, and make a comment for us. And until next time, class dismissed. Sip more bourbon. A124, baby.
Oh, that's nice.